Anupama, thanks a lot for accepting this invitation. It is absolutely my privilege to be able to introduce you, and I'm thankful that you will share your work with us. We discussed before, I kind of asked if it was okay to indeed not do a lengthy and annoying introduction. You all got the invitation, so you could read about the very interesting background indeed. I just thought maybe one funny thing that I wanted to mention is that I've been following your work for a long time. We met also many years ago in Venice, and we have exchanged since. But I'm extremely thankful that you mentioned me and my group in your Apple TV Plus show that was around you at home. And so since then, I think you're the coolest indeed. No, I'm joking, but it is really, I look forward to seeing how you present your work today. Many of us have seen your work before, but I think it's a privilege to hear it firsthand. And I look forward to hopefully also a good discussion afterwards, because I think you should trigger some questions. And so thanks again for joining us today on this official ITA lecture series. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you all for coming, and I look forward to the exchange hereafter. I'm just going to put the screen up and hope everything goes well with the screen share. Is that visible then? Do you see the whole screen?
Yep, perfect. Yep.
All right. So
it seems to be cut off a bit.
Seems to be cut, no?
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to stop share and do again. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though we tested, everybody bear with us. So I'm going to have to close this. I'm going to reopen the whole screen, otherwise it doesn't work. Please bear with me. I have to open the whole slide again and after closing it. So now I'm going to try. It's still like that.
Yeah, and it's true that we did practice. So I don't know what's happening. It's
weird, no? Yeah. I didn't do anything. And now?
There it is. Perfect. I think we're ready to go.
Okay. So I've got this title for you, Rethinking Materiality, Time as a Resource. I would like to talk about materiality because materiality has become a very important aspect of architecture that we are doing differently since industrialization and modern technologies. And we have the way we are habitually practicing construction is directly affecting imbalances that are not only environmental, but also social and economic. And so the whole world is talking about all these issues of climate change and all the areas of rethinking. But I want to approach the material discussion not only by talking about the materials that are external to us, you know, whether it's stone or brick or how much fuel goes into it, and whether it's cement or it's modern or time-tested. I would like to talk about materiality and technologies from the perspective of how the humans engage with the technology, how much time they put in, whether they put in hand labor or machine, or how much thinking is involved, how much is automated, and what kind of consequences do human engagements, you know, what kind of consequence and what kind of impact the human lifestyle and our approaches make, you know, what we make, it makes us. So I do want to bring in a bit of a philosophical or a more kind of a reflective kind of quality to the technical lecture, so that we are really, like, I ask you to sort of, think about these things more from our own personal perspectives a little bit. I call time, I call it time as a resource, because I think that ever since industrialization, there is a notion, especially in developed countries, that we have to save time, and time is money. And there's a sense of hurrying up. And I ask myself that what are we doing with all the time that we saved when we are producing everything from coffee to architecture in a corporate way under mass production? So these are questions that I followed since the beginning of my practice. And I would like to share this from that perspective with you. But I also want to mention one more thing. I will read an introduction from a technical paper I wrote about this that was presented in the Norman Foster Foundation's master classes series. And I tried to explain the idea of human time as a resource, 12 strategies for rethinking urban materiality in the age of climate change. So I want to read a very kind of a written type of introduction and then show you my slides, just because this is actually technical, although the rest of the lecture will be easy images and not so much technicalities. Okay, I will start by saying that where once, architecture is a stage on which all human stories are lived out. Where once the stage was constructed by everyone, the stage today is almost exclusively constructed by professionals, virtually all of whom specialize in one trade or another. The growing economically motivated separation between professional builders on the one hand and users of the built environment on the other is socially and environmentally destabilizing. Ordinary human beings are losing the ability to participate in the construction of society's largest undertaking, the built environment. That loss is leading to a slow erosion of human skill, social and physical engagement, and individuality. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the construction and operation of the built environment has consumed natural resources at a rate that has exceeded global population growth. In too many cases, these resources have been promoted. Just a second. I lost the thread. In too many cases, these resources have been wasted only to create urban ugliness at a faster rate. Technological advancement, standardized industrial processes, and our own unexamined belief systems and habits, especially those that have been promoted as time-saving, reducing costs, or offering more comfort and amenities in our built environment, have delivered uneven benefits. So in most cities around the world, there is a loss of identity, and buildings in, say, Singapore or Florida look similar to Frankfurt. The climate is no longer, and every other geographical material context is no longer related to the architecture in today's time. So I feel also that the loss of aesthetic diversity is its own unique form of ugliness, as if all human stories are the same. And why, the question for me was, why has these purported gains from technological advancement not resulted in housing that is more broadly accessible? What should we do about the conflict between our desire to improve living conditions for all of humanity versus the unsustainable trends in resource consumption? And what of all the largest losses of all, our skills, our capacity to think, and our sense of purpose and belonging? So I have proposed a principled approach. The answers to these questions may lie in re-examining those habits of body and mind that humanity has adopted during the long process of industrialization. Foremost among these are the notions of time and its scarcity. If time is perceived to be scarce, then it follows that a rational professional, an architect, would prefer to specify pre-designed, standardized materials and components and outsource to experts whose task she believes she isn't qualified to handle. That preference, once it becomes a reflexive habit, has pernicious effects on the choice of form and materials. These effects are a consequence of the growing and unquestioned disconnect between what might have been possible with a little more thought versus what ends up happening when design decisions are effectively outsourced to someone with a standardized product or a preferred solution. The point is simple. We think we don't have time, so we don't take the time to think. That mindset has avoidable consequences. So this rest of this lecture is going to be a little bit about how to avoid that kind of mindset and those type of consequences, and a look into not trying to save time or our human resources, but in deliberately spending them, spending more time, spending more human resources, more intelligence, more ingenuity, more muscles, more just engaging more. And through that human engagement, we can achieve, we can deliberately create the built environment of the future. Our time is not an expense to be minimized. Rather, it is a wasting resource that we should be eager to employ. It is the misguided disuse of our time, and therefore our intelligence, that leads to wasteful overconsumption of finite natural resources and a lower quality of life. The idea is to imaginatively and purposefully use our time to create an abundance that can benefit all. So basically, now I'm going to show you some of these strategies through my work. And thanks for bearing with me for having read out a little bit of a background to explain that the most important principle guiding any effort to alter mindsets and practices surrounding urban materiality is this: that the emergent built environment must facilitate better lives for all of humanity. And if we take on challenges by being engaged ourselves in the problem, then by solving every problem, we evolve. That's how human beings will evolve. And I'm going to explain this now through the rest of my talk. So I spoke about urban materiality, and you will notice that after I showed you that photograph of the stone temple being produced from the material, literally local material, meant literally from the site almost in former times. And now all over the world, reinforced cement, concrete, and brick become even brick, using it only as infilling material, not being allowed to take even weight. This is the this palette I'm showing you has become the vernacular material all over the world. And it comes with a lot of consequences, and it comes with a lot of unthinking habits. So everybody's assuming architecture has to be built with this kind of ready-made component somehow when we draw in offices. So I'm talking about the mainstream, of course. And when I graduated from school, already then, this was 30 years ago when I started my practice. So I had already begun by asking myself, what is the point of doing efficiently things that need not be done at all? This is what I mean, like question the foundation of things, and then you will automatically come to a very different solution. But in order to question more basic assumptions, you have to come out of the rat race of feeling like, I don't have time to think. I just deliver this, I'll deliver. And your whole life gets spent in this, and we perpetuate certain habits. So now couple of strategies. I have said 12 strategies I'm going to share with you. The first one is the fact that material is best treated as local matter. Everybody's talking about local material, okay? But I want to say that architecture, I feel, does not begin with only choosing a material from a material catalog or a technological system that we shop, but even how you source the material already there, whether the brick, not only whether the building is made with brick or not, where is the brick from? How is it fired? Is it fired with coal? Is it fired with rest wood? Is it fired with coal dust from factories waste? Is it fired by, is it in the nature where people stack a kiln and manufacture the material? Or is it produced in a factory where 40% of the energy that you create goes into the wall of the kiln itself? Is it something made with local soil and therefore low quality, or is it something so high quality that but maybe over designed, but made in a big factory involving big quarries? So these are the questions which normally we don't ask even in our rating systems for green buildings. And this is what I mean by material being a local matter, because everywhere I'm going to talk about 12 strategies, please notice how the human beings are involved and affected by whether you prescribe a brick made from this kind of context, where the bricks are produced by, let's say, people who are otherwise farming. And every year in South India, when the clay gets washed away from other places during monsoon and gets collected, the bricks are made to spend that clay. This wood is grown by cutting, they are grown for scaffolding, for brickwork, by the farmers in certain other season, and the thinnings are used to fire only the leaves and the thin branches to make the tree grow straight, that the thinnings are used for firing the brick. So sourcing of material is already going to have a very big impact on the territory of the human settlement. And the same goes for lime. Like, these are lime kilns because that's what they have around them. Generations of people have been sourcing materials locally, and their whole livelihood of those communities depends on that. And because the architects do not know about these things, it often happens that we, without knowing, it's okay if you consciously prescribe Portland cement because of its properties, but because you just it didn't occur to you to see what is around you. Because you come from school, you have some codes, you have some habits, and if they just get applied, you get a certain architecture. But if you try to ask what is local, and most people will tell you this will be too expensive, this stone is from the ground right here, but they'll tell you all kinds of reasons, and you will feel insecure often to use something because it's so basic. You've seen it in heritage buildings and everything, but you think that it's not affordable. It's like also similarly not affordable to eat your own mango. It's cheaper to eat for me that mango in Germany, which comes from my neighbor's field. So this is a kind of economy which is going to change in the coming years, but it's good if we would be ready with the building technologies to then apply them. Even the extraction of stone and rocks, if it is hand extracted, or if it's machine extracted up to a certain scale, or if it is only extracted like in Carrara in Italy to export to the whole world the marble from there, it makes a very different impact on the sound, on the machines. Look, this man and his marble extraction, the human scale is hardly intervening, and the landscape doesn't look ugly. And the village which you see on the right-hand side corner where he walks from, it doesn't get affected by, it doesn't have that kind of sound, there is just a ringing, chipping sound. I'm not suggesting that we go back to everything being made in hand. I'm just talking about material sourcing and its territorial impact, and starting from there. So in some of my early architecture, even though the interior space is contemporary, the space, the void is what I'm designing actually as an architect, and that has a contemporary nature. Still, the material is a very physical thing. Just like we may have digital technology, but the server or the battery bank, these are physical components. My computer, there is a materiality to things, and the materiality has a consequence, and it has social, economic, and environmental consequence. So I've been working with that to my advantage. The second strategy is to look very, very bravely at known materials and technologies, because they have uses that we have yet to discover. So even if something looks vernacular, like a lot of my work was called vernacular architecture just because they look rustic from the materiality, some of my projects, And therefore, in today's world, we just call it vernacular, but actually these are highly engineered solutions. So we need to experiment boldly when it comes to materials and technologies. So many of you would know this project of mine, so I'm going to just run through it. It's catenary volts made out of terracotta tubes, which are interlocked just loosely in dry, and there is a waterproofing layer on top of it. This is a technology that was developed by a potters community in one of my very first projects. It resulted in several things, among which Wall House, project of mine, very widely known. Some of you saw it in the Venice Biennale as well, was built with that. So in this case, what I'm trying to explain, that what technology is not only high tech or low tech. Technology is how a material becomes an architectural component, okay? And that involves some kind of making. It's people involved. Even if they use machines, economies get involved. So the molecules get moved from one spot to a permanent place in architecture, and things happen to it. You know, fuel goes in, byproducts come out, all of that starts happening. So this is a picture of me very early on when I began totally fresh from school, my practice very boldly, very early on. At the age of 23, I went from Bombay to live in a very remote area, and I was discovering, in the beginning, it looks like there is nothing, but every day, if you just see the same picture again and again, you see more detail in it. So I started to see more and more that in the nothing that I saw, there was a lot there. And I realized even if you have nothing, you still have something. That is the material nature of the world. And then you see here, this picture is symbolic. There is material in the foreground, clay, because that's all what they have. And in the background, you have the human skills. Whatever those skills are, they were making cooking pots. But I decided that since this community are losing their livelihood to urbanization, I thought, why not, instead of supporting them in a patronizing way, why not really use their skills for architecture? And with the help of upgrading, having some ceramists come to the spot, help them to produce this kind of components in the same rice field where they normally work, instead of in factories, and firing them with coconut shells, benign fuels, not measuring just how many kilojoules have gone into a thing, but look, what is the qualitative nature of things, not only quantity, because the standardized way of calculating is only about quantity, because they assume every brick is the same, every terracotta is the same, but it's not the same. Whether you make it here next to your house or elsewhere, it makes all the difference. How much transport is there, how it affects the people, are their working condition good or not, so many things. And what the fuel is a big one in the energy debate. So with the help, I didn't get in the early years much help from my engineers and people who will believe a recent graduate. So, and I also had my own doubts myself. But the thing is, I had the questions and I took them to the craftsmen. I worked. I knew that whatever I didn't know, somebody will know them, and I managed to solve the questions that came up. And in the end, this is the architecture that resulted, and this was not the first time I applied it. This is, of course, one of the more sophisticated use of applying it, because I combined it with handmade bricks, because by then I discovered that the so-called bad brick, which is weaker, was perhaps the good brick. And maybe I learned rather to use it in a better way. And I used 5% of cement in lime mortar so that they can set immediately compared to the high-speed building, and still 95% is lime, because lime sets so slowly that people today don't want to use it. So then as I went along, this is what I want to say, that experiment boldly. Each time you do something, you become empowered to do the next thing. And finally, I was able, with the help of the same community relationships, to come up with an idea how to use the actual cooking pots that they make in an engineered way as a lost shuttering, a lost formwork, to cast efficient slabs. See, concrete, when you the span increases, the beam depth increases, and a lot of steel goes in. So I try to make, and if you go for efficient systems like a dia grid or a waffle slab, you will find that the formwork becomes a challenge and expensive. So I wanted a lost formwork of this sort so that I can save 2 bars of steel out of every 3 and produce this type of a ceiling. And even the cemented areas that you see, there was mud mortar applied in the base of the formwork, so that you don't need expensive infrastructure to build the building. You can just use what you have around you. So similarly, one thing led to another. I did so many types of research. This is a system I made with elements. You see the imperfections. They are they're extruded in a machine. You don't need even to be a potter. Anybody can do this job. You extrude it, cut it slightly trapezoidal, and you can have insulated flat ceilings. So you, for every situation, you have different amounts of steel. Here you have 1 bar of steel every 75 centimeters, but you get an insulated ceiling. This is for intermediate floors where there is no cooling requirement, and the upper vault is insulated, the most cheap, without any steel, but the form is required to make it strong, and therefore you have absolutely you have no steel, but also you cannot use the roof terrace. So I started with producing systems with which future cities could be built. And since the spaces are so contemporary, very, very modern, like in the sense that normally I was questioning all assumptions. This is only a 2.1 meter room. The individual spaces are so narrow, and the veranda is 4 meters, so the bathrooms and the things fit in the narrow part. And so I was questioning all the presumptions, and the contemporariness is in the spatial design and the material. The architecture gets grounded to the place in the building upon known material culture, which was known to be benign, but taking it so much further engineering wise that you save significant amounts of material, okay, than our forefathers. Then you see here, even instead of the bathroom, I've used these stone slabs, which I showed you earlier, so that I don't have to bring in this case, the industrial ceramic tiles. They are so much more energy intensive, okay? So according to the context. The third strategy, old is gold, as they say, but so even in vernacular technologies, so-called vernacular technologies, there exists so much more untapped potential. We do not have to just dismiss them as a thing of a previous time. See, for example, when I first did my very first project, I did this hut for myself actually to live, and I lived in it for 10 long years when I dropped out of Bombay. And this house cost about 100 and something euros. Okay, just to tell you, this is how many people live in huts in India. But you will notice that while the material and technology is vernacular, the space is contemporary, but there is the design element is used in the proportion, in the detailing, and so on. It allowed me to build I lived in this very provisional way. The granite pillar is not even cemented in the ground. It is there are stilts loosely in the ground, and it can move a little with rope joints and fabric and things like that. And the motorbike and the solar panel, they each cost probably more than the house, because I lived with only solar energy off the grid even for 10 long years. And I noticed that what it made me think here, and I want to tell you the kind of questions that it is vernacular architecture as far as anyone is concerned. But for me, the question was that if I use timber, which is a rectangular cut section, or I use a round wood, it makes all the difference if I'm seriously planning to grow my wood and regenerate, because the round has a cross section that I can achieve in 3 years, and a rectangle will have to probably be a big timber wood of 25-year-old in order that I can cut a rectangle section out of it. So my question is, how much a price are we paying for standardization? Because this means that it's irregular, the nature of, but the wood properties are the same as wood, And I realized, I was wondering why in temporary structures we are using, round. We can use it. People are using it because it makes sense to use it. Whereas in permanent spaces, we are inventing and only sticking to the complicated joints and so on. So here, everything was just made bamboo mats, and the door hinges are just rope joints. Those windows, large triangle windows, you just have a rope that moves it. You lift, you have one of the frames are sticking out, that is your stick. Very simple details. And I started, while doing it, I realized that solving the simplicity, like, keeping on looking for simplicity and the beauty that is reduced to the essence of the members, they are kind of important. And we can take vernacular technology so much further if we continued showing interest in it. Then these are kind of maxims or kind of, strategies. So another strategy, this is what I'm saying now, 30 years, I didn't know these when I began. I just collected what I'm doing now as relevant strategies. So design so anyone can build. Don't make some buildings can be complex because we do want to push technology further, but not everything has to be like that, because those kind of habits become very difficult for the everyday architecture of modest requirement for the homeowner. Okay, so if you want users to be able to participate in the building, this is a rammed earth wall with 10% or 5% of cement for making waterproof and stabilizing it quickly. If you want people to participate, our technologies should not alienate people. So there must be enough things that anybody can do. So this is high tech. The formwork is modern. So you can build large rammed earth sections, 4 people per day per wall. But it allows people to be able to use the earth from the site, from the wastewater treatment plant, and spend it, move the molecules to another spot, and build this co-housing, where for me this participation is a very important thing, because if you want everybody in the world to afford housing, some people will never get a bank loan unless you give them the opportunity of sweat equity, that through their work, that 10% that they would need to give to a bank, that there is something they can do, whether it is paint the windows, something. You can't produce something where only people from another country and faraway city will have to come and build your housing. So this is that example, okay? Build so anyone can build, like design so anyone can build, So some very expert things happen in the very few real experts are required to push the boundaries, but the bulk of it can be done by anyone. And these are streets on upper levels to create the co-housing community. Okay, and similarly to build so that everyone can grow. By this, I mean to boost the local economy, to think whether from the budget, when I hire, I realize even if it costs the same, one technology and another, I think how much of the money can I remain in the local economy? How much can I spend on who's there, what can they do, how can the people who need economy have it work for them. So here I'm going to give you an example of what I call the baked in situ earth construction, where all we did in this place is build the entire thing from clay that was on the site with very little materials that came in, not even it's not even for roofs and wood or nothing. This whole structure is an earth structure that is baked and made ceramic in situ. It's a kind of radical type of technology, but what it involves is building a mud house, mud bricks on the site. The clay in this site was good enough. It's a rice field. You can see behind, rice is growing. And the house is treated as an oven. Why? Because I told you earlier, 40% of the energy in a normal building kiln is lost into the walls of the kiln. Every firing, you lose 40% of the heat you generate. So we thought, what if the house is a kiln and You use the house first as a kiln, you stuff other products in it, you cook it for the products, the fuel cost goes to the products, and the house gets cooked as a consequence. Now, this is, of course, fantasy thinking, and there are a lot of technical hurdles. Ray Meeker, a Californian ceramist, had pioneered this kind of technology, and I did my PhD, in fact, on that work. And I had already tested some houses. I built a few in this technology. In this case, it is homes for homeless children. And I was building this after the PhD to test and further optimize the energy performance. So you see there are little fire boxes. Down there are the stacking system is so that oxygen can get in the bottom through those holes. And then we cook this for 4 days. We pack it with mud insulation. And this is how vitrification takes place. And the clay turns into water resistant ceramic. And then 3 or 4 days more of cooling. And then you take the bricks out, you sell them, or you finish the house. Okay, produce any sizes, whatever you want. And then if you want, you can produce a whole lot of other products like toilet pans, tiles. This is Ray Meeker's work. He produced all kinds of things, wash basins, gargoyles, all sorts of ceramic furniture, anything that is required. In architecture, there's so much ceramic. So all those products get cooked and the house gets cooked as a consequence. For me, again, the social interest in this is that through such a method, you have, you convert the meaning of the house architecture as consuming material. It becomes a producer. Housing becomes a producer of local economy. And of course, this was finished, it's with very little funds. It was finished with broken tiles and so on. It's a very humble looking homes for homeless children. The other examples have a different architectural forms, but this one, I have tried to economize the fuel. So I wanted the wall to be so thin. So I made it like an eggshell without wall. There is no wall. The roof is the wall because of the catenary form. Earlier, I used to do wall and then have a dome on it. Okay. And then it's too thick and it takes more work to fire it through. And now it can be thinner. Then another strategy is to waste less embodied energy. So, I'm trying to optimize. So there is some new materiality we are looking into. So instead of using concrete in many places, I'm trying to work on using chicken mesh. This is called ferro cement. Chicken mesh is plastered on up and down as thin as possible with all kinds of matrix. And we're also we worked with Mike Schleich on some research here with alternative natural fibers, glass fiber, also old t-shirts, we're testing all kinds of fibers. But this is a material that is very promising for me, ferrocement, because it has ductile properties. I've made modular housing systems with this. This allows me to actually build a house in a week or so, and the surfaces have got oxide pigments, so it's already ready to use and soft to touch. And it's all embedded into the making. And the thing is only 2.5 centimeters thick, this kind of elements. And also it can be stacked in a week, such a whole house, This is just a system that could be flexibly put together, but it's very much under research. We are doing louvers and many other things, doors and roofing elements and everything in ferrocement. But the interesting thing about the social sustainability angle, while I'm trying to save embodied energy, is to have not being produced in a factory, but these tiny elements can be provided in the masons' backyards. Anybody can, one module can fit in anyone's house, and the modules are sized so that 4 people can carry them. Of course, it can be with machine, but if there is a power cut or whatever, anywhere you can use it. So this was also exhibited in the 2016 Venice Biennale. You see the kitchen unit is particular, and there were cutouts to show different meshes. This is all undergoing research still. And here you see alongside the house, there was a toilet unit with it shows how much that structure can span. It's only 2.5 centimeters with a water catchment plus beam in there, shower and toilet on each side. And here what we, even in the making of the Venice work, we actually got our craftsmen from India to work in the German laboratory, not according to the German style of building, but building as they do, but testing it, measuring everything, testing it, and then finding out how much ductile ferrocement is compared to concrete, how it doesn't break but bend, and to question whether for seismic structures and disaster relief in the future, this material for me is very, very promising. Philip, I want to talk to Holcim eventually to support me, you know, in this, because I'm looking at the future of cement, and I would love to share this work because I'm doing this work since 25 years now, pursuing ferrocement. And in my exhibition now in Louisiana Museum of Modern Art, you can see that some of these things were exhibited in full scale, and you can see how well they are sitting, how little material, how strong, because how intelligent that kind of system is, you know, where the the mesh is in the neutral axis. So the same element is good in compression and tension instead of other concrete applications. And one more quick application of this ferrocement thing is an origami type crease pattern being tested for ferrocement, because ferrocement is so thin and this kind of forms could make it rigid. But as a formwork, I'm testing how to use all our Amazon cartons and whatnot to, because it's so light, could it allow a faceted, instead of a shell, to have a faceted shell on which you can actually have no wastage of rectangular material, because the triangles are just folded. So we are not cutting anything out. The mesh is a band, just folded, and then you produce shelter in 4 days. You know, this case, these are all prototypes, okay? These are just for testing the material for future housing application and so on. We will, in Basel and in Geneva, we are going to build one tiny house of this concept with power generation in the material itself. We will see that in May 2022. So here's all my ferrocement research. Okay. The other strategy is that trash is unimagined treasure. Okay, you know that there is a need for upcycling, and there's an enormous potential to look at direct reuse, not recycling, but direct reuse of things we throw away every day from urban life. These are books made into furniture, very strong sofa elements on one direction and very soft on the side where you want it to be soft. But I also built temporary pavilions, etc., with this kind of elements. In Barcelona, when we were invited to do the Library of Lost Books as a pavilion, I thought, why buy materials at all? I took those old books from the library, which was actually on the same spot. We found the Spanish vernacular technology of vacuum packing their ham and olives. With that same machine, we stiffened the books by vacuuming out the air and making canopies out of it. And you see, that's the Filmoteca, the library above, the discarded books, which they would have otherwise to burn every year. And with that, we have made this pavilion. And this is just the beginning. There's lots of things we're doing with upcycling. But I'm also using things from the junk market also in the process of making architecture, because architecture has the potential to permanently capture waste into it. Okay, so we can do anything. This is for shaping formwork, masonry out of bottles, broken glasses, for the upper part of the domes. Anyway, another interesting strategy for me, and this one is a much more hidden one. I can't give too much examples here. It's more engineering, because there is a tendency for over-design. When we don't know precisely what engineering, we tend to design everything on the higher side. And if the slab is over-designed, everything down will be more and more over-designed till the foundation, because you're carrying overload. But even every single park bench need not be made in concrete, you know. We can use these materials of embodied energy judiciously, and to realize maybe for our times that good enough is perfect. In fact, beauty is to know how precisely must it be, what is good enough, how much is really required. And that requires knowledge. This is a purely 100% concrete building that I've made. There is only concrete in it, except the stone floor. But it, instead of using 125 cubic meter of concrete in the early designs, we landed up using 75. And that we achieved because of these strategies to lean the columns in, make 3 or 4 design, continue the detailed design, find the volume that is reducing and how can reduce further. And the profile of the beams was a big one, to reduce the spans, and then very exactly what is required by engineering. But usually these are not used because the formwork is difficult. And here we have used ferro cement as a lost formwork. And that's how we built that, So I think there's a lot of exciting work to be done. If architects can take more time, and engineers too, if you give anybody twice the time to work, they will end up saving more than that in material, right? And that will benefit everybody. So that is the idea. Then the other idea, another strategy is about embodied thinking. Not while we use our computers, we don't stop using our thinking hand. So this I see mostly in my teaching. These are students of the AA. They had come to India they had to build a watchtower in 1 week, design and build with craftsmen, with engineers and everyone. But I think when you have one-to-one scale confrontations, you have real materials, real scale, real people and real place, you get to test your design and learn in a very deeper way, so that in academia, you don't have to shy away from ground realities, but know them deeper so that you can make a real contribution already when you're in school and immediately thereafter. So, this is a test for, we've done this kind of LRDO DST kind of wall. Tetra Pak is so difficult to recycle because plastic, aluminum, how to separate all of this, very expensive, but it's very sophisticated and waterproof. So we've used them as we filled sand and water and different things, which we don't need, and made bricks out of them. And these are opportunities for students to understand how do you survey, how do you lay out a building, how do you know geometry, and working with rests of denim because of all these polluting factories, who are exporting all their jeans to the rest of the world, taking what is there from the trash, producing tensile structures, fabric structures, and just investigating. If you did not engage your hand, there are many things you would not stumble upon. So the mind, I do believe that the body should be fully engaged, the brain with the hand, and prototype testing and so on. And for the architects to work interdisciplinary with craftsmen, everything. This is inside the studio. I always bring, if craftsmen are needed, I bring craftsmen. If sewing machines are needed, I bring it to the studio. So this is how I'm handling with students. But even in the exhibition works like this, it's an opportunity for students to build one-to-one there. This was the 2012 Chipperfield Biennale, where I built this in one-to-one. So the rammed earth, they can learn how to do it. They can learn all of this and expand some of the design ideas and put in new ideas, like this glass bottle vault. So 20 students from Brisbane, where I was teaching then, along with 6 Indian craftsmen and 10 students from Venice, have actually managed to build all of this and do the drawings from design to all the stages of architecture, not only the first 3 or 4 stages of architectural service. We never get to learn the remaining, execution drawings, specifications, supervision. So I like them to try to learn all of that. So the next 2, the next 3, 10, 11, 12 are not, I'm not going to illustrate them. I'm just going to tell you that, that while we are advancing technologically, and we must do so even more, there's so much potential, we must keep on realizing that our biology has not changed as much as our lifestyle, our human needs, the need for intimacy, the need for, the advantage of keeping the human scale engaged in the cities of the future are going to be important. So, I mean, I do want to put an attention on that point, human scale. just because our density and population is rising in those towers that we're building, which are losing human scale. I think this is a big challenge for all of us in the future. How are we going to build high rise and still not have the sense of matchbox, kind of like we all, our individuality doesn't matter? And how can we work with the human scale so that we can have machine scale alongside, and not the human gets disoriented just because other technologies are advancing? We have to keep pace, in our own inner development. And then this is another strategy which summarizes everything I showed you before. If you develop what is plentiful, it will extend what is finite. That means if you also develop human resources which are infinite, human resourcefulness and human resources, like if you spend more time, more memory, more work, you're not going to pollute anyone. You will become just more, you will be more refined, you will be more clever, you will be more beautiful. You will, if you spend what you have in abundance, you will, whatever is finite is natural resources, you will extend their use. That is very important for me. And I'm just showing a couple of projects here where, where I am, just some other architecture projects, recent ones, where these things are applied. It's a daycare center for underprivileged children, a library with Braille, very humble buildings. Okay, so like that, I mean, many buildings have been kind of handled with the idea of amplifying sort of the human potential and reducing the natural resources. And the last thing I want to say is that, to not stick only to the boundaries of our architectural thinking. Everybody can amplify our, focus on the collective, not only on the individual contribution as architects, because architecture is indeed cooperation. It's very important. If you come together, you can influence each other and you can create a collective. You create opportunity for interdisciplinary collaboration, intergenerational collaboration. I work on people from previous generations, their work, and have my students already being part of our thinking, so they can take it much further, so that we can amplify as a collective what we are able to do. And I'll end with my last project, Auroville, which is actually a city planned 50 years ago by Roger Anger, French architect. I'm writing a book now about this, but I've been involved in the planning and the urban design. I worked alongside him 17 years also while I had my practice. This is a city that he foresaw. I'm talking about collaboration and, collaboration, cooperation, all of these kind of things, that where the collective consciousness and the collective is very important, because individualism has also led to a lot of problems, in our time. So we have to remove the frictions and, collaborate. And anyway, this was a city plan that was built. It is a pedestrian city, so it looks like Brasilia with a strong form and all that, but actually it's more like Venice. And a lot of those buildings are shaded walkways and all that. So, 122 countries had, with UNESCO's collaboration, been part of its inauguration. And in a barren land, brownfield, a city was planned, which now looks like that. Okay, and this is my one of my buildings, a youth hostel that I have also planned there. And right now I'm building one, I'm talking about cooperation and collective. This is a co-housing project that is an alternative to the vertical circulation and the tower typology. It's a sloping, kind of a construct, because the idea is to have a lot of horizontal circulation, but also because Auroville is a breakthrough project where there is no individual ownership of land and plotting. Everything is the commons. So it's a very radical city on which I'm part. And I just wanted to show it because a lot of my projects that you saw are located in that area. And this is something upcoming. And I'm taking inputs from other people. This is Jan Gale. A lot of this work is done by my students from TU Stuttgart, Universität Stuttgart. And in Louisiana, we have built a 1:50 scale urban design model where I invited all my students from Yale University, Fachhochschule Potsdam, and from KEDK, Denmark, to put their own co-housing projects into the urban design. In the background, you see our ideas for the facades of the future. The pink one is an energy generating facade, which I'm working with this materiality of this paint. And then there are facades made out of rests of denim. Then the next ones, there are two alternate ones of denim. There is urban farming structures. There is a latest generation of solar powered panels, but that the housing is still aiming to have the human scale and intimacy, if you look at the actual conditions of the urban design. So this is my hope for the future. This is where I will be working for the next decade, I think. And all those ideas are kind of there. The technical material research, but the urban research and the research with collaboration and cooperation. So I want to also just, leave with this thought, and that's my last slide. As you've seen, that I believe that in all the problems that we are facing in today's time, I think I do value the human intelligence above everything else. And I think the future will be is only held back by what we already know, and what remains to be known is so much more required that we dedicate ourselves to that kind of adventure and experimentation. Because if you look at nature and evolution, three qualities, and which are also human qualities, are helping advancement. One is imagination, not knowledge actually, imagination, which propels new knowledge. The other is experimentation, willingness to try new things. Experimentation means it's not the outcome, the fact that you did it, that boldness. And the third is the capacity to adapt. And we have seen in COVID that it was only these qualities that have allowed us to go forward, and everybody has done the adaptation. So with this, I would like to end, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Wow, thanks a lot, Anupama. Yeah, you will only see virtual clapping, I'm afraid. This is the sad thing about the online part. But the great thing is that we managed to record everything so that we can come back to your amazing kind of lessons. So thanks so much, actually, also for grouping it in these 12 kind of points, right? Just to break the ice, I maybe want to first an observation. I mean, I was looking forward very much, and I know your projects actually quite well, but to kind of feel indeed, like you say, this boldness in your work and this never-ending energy to innovate and question and to kind of find qualities in waste, in local resources, in craftspeople that you kind of encounter along the way, and so on. So it's absolutely, it's so powerful. I wrote in many chats to people like, wow, this is powerful. So thank you so much for this. A first thing though that for me comes to mind is that you seem to reach a lot of people, but I have the feeling that your messages are so important that beyond inspiring, like what can you do to scale this up even more than the project that you already achieved? So my question is, how have you thought on accelerating the messages that you bring?
Yeah, actually, I always, for the early first 2 decades, often my work was put into the alternative box, okay? And that was very uncomfortable. I felt better when I would be called architect than all the labels that came, like social and this. But basically the attempt was to say, it's very nice what you're doing, but it's a very kind of a tiny thing. And so my response at that time was that I believe that the very fact that we ask the question of scaling up, it comes from the fact that we are part of this huge corporate culture. Suddenly architecture and the small studio became less important and got replaced by a kind of developer type driven we need, of course, that kind of offices to do some very mega projects and large urban interventions. But now almost every bidding and every project finding has to have hundreds of architects to even show that you're allowed to apply. So I feel that scaling up for me doesn't mean that, look, if I make a good coffee, that everyone in the world has to drink my coffee from this chain brand. Because what happens? Look, let's take the coffee example, Philip. The Starbucks, okay? The coffee Starbucks people, sorry in advance, but look, look, I went to Lyon, okay, and every common coffee you have, you know, cafe, you go and have your croissant coffee, and now you have to go to a mall somewhere to get this thing, because the small businesses, small cafes had to close. Now, how much is that coffee compared to the Starbucks coffee? The same guy has to work now for the big guy. And is the coffee gotten cheaper? Earlier, we were told that if we go to the large supply chain, then it's cheaper. Now it's not cheaper. How can it be cheaper? It's cheaper for them, but for the end user, it's the same amount of money. They compete with us. But what happens? The money has shifted. Earlier, the 90% went into the coffee itself. And today, 10% goes into the coffee and 90% goes into the advertising, into the transporting, into the standardizing. Now, all that is one problem. So I'm against scaling up, actually, what I'm trying to say. Why? Because when you scale up, that is exactly to be not local. Because if you scale up so much, what happens is we create an artificial economy, okay? And the same people who know how to make the refined coffee now will have to work for Starbucks, but he's not allowed to be personal and tell you, oh, Philip, you like without sugar or this and that. He can't have a chat with you. He has a uniform. He's suddenly nobody. And the coffee making culture, the wine, everything nobody knows anymore. It's all industrial. So my thing is, my idea of scaling up for the future, hopefully post-COVID now, is to scale up means to have many people like me who run small studios. Like a good hairdresser, you can only cut that many people's hair in a day. And let's do that. But between the hairdressers, between the architects, we collaborate. And I appreciate your work. I support where we need. This is my model of scaling up. If you look at the birds in the sky, the murmuration, you see one bird goes there, it affects all. We are a collective, but we just feel the illusion we are alone. So I think the scaling up already, see, even though I was just one single person, so many people know my work. Or look at the Bauhaus people, 5 or 10 names. 100 years later, we are talking about them. So scaling up is not the only way to go forward. I would like to scale up by saying, let's have lots more decentralized, high quality, personal service.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I'm sold. That's exactly what I was trying to get out of you, indeed. And how exciting. I mean, yes, exactly. Let's open the floor for questions. I believe that people can just turn on their or unmute themselves and maybe turn on your camera when you're asking a question. But I hope that many of you have questions for Anupama. Or comments. Oh, there is a question in the chat.
There is one. Good evening. Very nice. Good evening to you as well, Himani.
Yeah. So I think, Esther, is that correct? That people can just speak up, right, to ask their questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me then maybe ask another one that I've been wondering, and it will annoy you again, my question, I think. But how do you deal actually with many of the techniques are inspired by common sense, by experience, by reintroducing historic principles and so on, that don't fit in current day building codes and things like that? How do you go about that? How do you manage to push through? What are the mechanisms that you have used in all these elegant projects?
See, in many cases, I face that, and with ferrocement, I'm going to face that. That's why I need sometimes industrial support, and which is why in this case, I would like, see, the powerful industries, see the techniques that we also don't like, I tell architects, we are not a victim of some trend, you know. Some people put the energy to develop that and market it and everything. So every good idea can do that. Sometimes we don't know how to do those things. And so we don't know how to work on the new codes and so on. But every day there are new materials that are getting accepted in the codes, right? And the codes are also man-made, right, Philip? So my approach is that I don't like to confuse the man-made law and the natural law. So my simple formula is I like to surrender to the natural laws and I like to challenge the man-made laws. Okay, so this is a simple thing, but the elaboration is that in a culture where we have so many rules and regulations, and in the study of architecture, we are not teaching the distinction also between, in my school, old school, we were taught first principles, climate, how does gravity, so we can't ignore gravity. I cannot, because there are architects who actually do challenge gravity, you know. I know, I have seen that renderings of all types. So I don't need to seduce on that, because I'm so intrigued by the universe and its natural laws, and there's so much to discover every day that it is exciting. Whereas the man-made laws, some are, the ignorance and the knowledge are mixed. Sometimes laws are made for managing practicalities, because see, there can be one fire and then you make one law for that situation and standardize it for everyone. Or you have a handrail thing, maybe some place that is not unsafe in that context, but it is generalized. So we have done, who created it is ourselves. So for me to change a man-made thing is very easy if we work on it. So first, when I have a new idea, I don't get disturbed about whether it will be done, applied or not. I like to sit and solve the natural laws first. And when I see the engineering part and it works, then I like to take on the discussion. Like in Crater in Grenoble, they sat and did the work, and that's why Earth became allowed inside the codes, because someone sat and did the work. So I like to collaborate with some people now, even with ferrocement, to do the code, to know the framework, where it's safe, where can it be done. Look, in how people made a law and people stopped smoking overnight. Or when you look at Copenhagen, every day we have new laws made by the public, and the bikes are come on the street and the cars are going back. So I believe in our human adaptation. It's exhausting work, but I definitely don't like it to become a limiting belief in my head.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, but can I nonetheless poke a little bit further? Because as you know, we also tend to not be bothered too much with building codes and just go for it and demonstrate it with a lot of effort and sometimes frustration and so on. But at the end of the day, then does that practically mean that you had to take a lot of liability yourself for the things that you built? Is that a correct assumption, that is what it took to get to the point where you're now?
And it's true that in some of because the work is done in India, we are free from several ones of them, because we are not in that amount of over standardization that the same law applies everywhere. You know, handicapped access, this and that, these are all coming in and entering the building code. And there are very good ones. I like to question the laws and I like to go and discuss and so on. And I feel, even because I believe that one day, you know, I believe necessity is the mother of invention. And now these today, 30 years later, when other people who are good at doing that job, because of climate change, they are writing other targets. And suddenly they're saying, how would we do if we have to reduce this and this energy, embodied energy, the running cost, this new standards, and people don't know. But we have so much body of work, which we have started long ago. So we say, okay, this was in a laboratory environment, and if I only practice there, fine, I'm waiting to go further. How much can I do on my own? But often the time is right. You know, I have designed that urban eco community and it got blocked. And I still designed it, even nobody believed in me. I designed everything and I put up the drawings in my own office. And one lady passed by and said, I would like to live here. Is it under construction? And I said, no, the project is blocked. And she said, would it help if I gave a pretty big donation? She gave 1/3 of the whole thing. Then I said, okay, I take you to the housing people, and they gladly received the donation. And today the project exists. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do my bit, and I hope that we as a collective are intelligent and we will join hands,
Yeah.
In any case, if I spend my life and I don't succeed as an architect economically, at least I go to bed very excited with what I'm thinking about. And that's the first satisfaction.
That is priceless. Yes, exactly. Summarizing Himani's question in the chat, I think the question is: would you say that vernacular architecture would need to be mandatory in architecture schools and not just become electives? I mean, you're free to read the more detailed question.
I think I don't like to teach sustainability, vernacular, heritage in separate courses. I like all the practitioners to come and give lectures and teach electives. I think nothing should, because the more boxes you make, you will have to make as many, we also get stereotyped, okay, from our race, color, gender, and everything. I think, in the end, you'll have to make as many boxes as there are people, if you want to be fair. So my thing is, I believe in first principles and not to have a standard solution that everyone should do vernacular, everyone. I think everybody should be taught to think for themselves, and they should know the first principles of engineering, of regionalism, of climate, of culture, of everything, so that you become sensitive and intelligent, and you don't do just because of habit and expectation, but you think, what is the best I can do to this job? Because architecture, end of the day, is a customized product. It's not a luxury to be customized. It was always, every building we do is a new research, right? We are not selling ready-made like the phone. So in the end, we just need to have normal design skills to think for ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, very powerful. Yeah, thanks also again for that. I see that Erica has raised her hand to ask a question.
Yes, hi, this is Daniele. I'm here with Erica. We were watching the...
Can you maybe, do you mind turning?
Let us see your face, please. I hope you're not in pajamas.
I asked Erica to turn it on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it says that the camera has been, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it would be great to unblock camera. Okay, anyway, there. Great. Hi.
Well, thank you for the lecture. It was super, super interesting. And I have a question. Have you ever thought how this simplicity and beauty and sustainability can be applied more to climates that are harsh for the human beings? Say places like Iceland or northern countries where perhaps more what's the word accorgimenti in English? It doesn't come, but yeah, more things to be taken into consideration.
Yes, I mean, actually, it's true that some things are simpler in my context and climate, but also some things are very hard. We are in the highest humidity. They say if you don't move enough, the moss will grow on you. It's not easy, also our climates. And the thing is true that we don't have so many codes and all those things. What I feel in this kind of, because I live, now I'm in Berlin, and what I'm working on, for this country, I think, or this kind of climate, I think I'm questioning a little bit over standardization. I'm looking at insulation, building, the old way was to allow buildings to breathe, that anyone can open their window. Today, the problem is that because we want to save water, we want the faucet to be automatic, because we don't trust the human being will close the tap. We don't trust that the human being will close the window and be good. But actually, that is a mistake for me, because all the heavy engineering, heavy automatization, even if I go to a hotel, I have to look, where is the switch to open the curtain? I go to the window and I say, oh no, even for the curtain, I have to look for a button. Then I have to go somewhere, so that instead of doing this, I have to do this for everything. So I think the problem is that I want to empower the humans. We need to trust each other. We have to design for that we have to assume that the human will be responsible. If we think like that, we will do like even in olden days, we could at least open the window for breathing, Now in COVID, we can see because of COVID, all this sealed building will not work anymore. Many buildings cannot be used because the window cannot be operated. Why did we not operate the building? Because we are trusting our system more than the human. But don't you think that the human can be more trusted, because when it's raining, even he knows the temperature, automatically he will say, let's not waste the water, let's do. So this has to be allowed in this culture. Like I would say how the Germans are wearing a pullover and then a jacket, and the same body can sometimes remove the jacket, sometimes adapt the body also a little bit. Don't try to have summer weather in the house because somebody decided that I should have this temperature. Like in Australia, okay, they are in not harsh climate also, but if you go in a bus and train, I was in environmental technologies senior lecturer at that time, and in our own lecture hall, I have to make a customer care call to some faraway place to regulate the temperature. In our letterhead, it was always invitation letter written, come to the lecture, I'm saying in summer, with a jacket because it's going to be too cold. They have every day getting complaints, but they cannot make the few temperature down because somebody else is operating somewhere. I feel a lot of this kind of what I call stupidity is prevalent in this, so that we are doing things so the people don't have to think. That is wrong. That's why we got all this wrong insulation, wrong, don't open the window. Now we don't open the window, all the toxic things of the paints are stuck inside the air. Just to get the correct efficiency on the number of energy performance. So I'm talking about natural systems. In nature, there is a porosity, there is a hot, cold, everything is regulated. And
okay. Thank you very much. So you would say architecture as communal responsible behavior, yes, rather than imposing structures.
I would say design as if the human is intelligent, because don't see when you try to change a ticket or a booking, they tell you the system does not let me. I want to do it, but they don't let me. Every day we are listening. So we need to forget the system and think of the intelligence that the human has. Now we are thinking the computer has more, but actually we have more because we made the computer.
Right, Andreas. Sorry, I'm favoring the people that want to speak than those that type in the questions. We might get to those, but Andreas, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm working in building physics, so that's also why Philip knows me. The thing about the code is that most people actually don't understand the code. So closed buildings, for example, if you take in Switzerland, Minergie, they are not allowed. And also a lot of technical appliances actually should work in a way that you can switch them off, but they help to save energy. So all these things.
I'm going to call you soon to learn more things about here.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing actually is also for the law. The law doesn't state that you actually have to follow the codes or the best practices that exist. You always can challenge them. You just have to explain them, that it works the way that you reach the energy goals, for example, for the energy you use, so, or the gray energy or whatever. So
thank you very much for your intervention. I'm going to remember you, and thank you so much.
What you also say is actually the physics has to work. And I mean, I did, for example, a project in Papua New Guinea, and the project that won was actually from an Australian investor, and they were all doing climatized building, whereas the question is, what do the people need there? And how do they live? And does it need to be a European standard there and not actually the local standard? So what you say in your climate, where there's a lot of humidity and you need to move, that you actually have also a lot of sun, so you can work with solar chimneys creating airflow. So you always have to think in these systems, and I think that's very important. It's also that actually adapting your architecture to regions like Switzerland or northern countries. I think the design approach is the same, but the result will be a bit different. I mean,
absolutely. No, but I think not only climatic context will adapt the design, also the geographical, the social, the cultural, all these contextual things. If you know the first principles, and if the students are taught the first principles, you will apply with a human-centric way the natural laws, that you take the natural laws in, like windsurfing. You know where is the wind and you position, you know.
And I think in Northern architecture, we already see that a lot. So the quality of Northern architecture is at the same level as your architecture as well. So
I think, I think also vernacular architecture shows to us always the systems that the people before us have lived before the over-industrialized habits. We get some strategy always from the old buildings who navigated for a long time this climate.
Yeah, but you have to study them and understand
Andreas,
them and then to adapt.
it feels that you're 100% aligned, so I think that you should for sure follow up on this. But I think in this context, I would like to perhaps indeed pick up Linus's question in the chat, because I think Linus is a he, right? It's the question about working in a context that is not yours as a European, for example, in his case, in West Africa, working on social housing with, of course, the important background of a post-colonial world and so on. And yeah, the question is a bit, what can we do in such a context, or he then specifically in his context, to still be working and planning ethically, responsibly, not, I mean, with all the backdrop, right? If you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I like the question, but also I'm not the right person to answer, because I deeply believe that we are more common than different. I deeply believe that. And I'm not all the time aware of the difference as much as I'm aware of the commonness. So I think if sometimes we should be, if we become free and really feel common, then you are neither patronizing them or feel you're doing a favor, or you know more, and also not to act like you know less, because now today we have to make sure, are you suppressing some minority? Are you doing, we are so loaded with all that, So I think if you are genuinely a good professional doing a practice, you will be, if you don't, you feel we are all of us are intelligent, all of us are here to do something good, I think that's enough. I don't think, I think very good architecture work exists by people from one culture in another culture. Like, look at the best projects of people. It's true that other way around, we have not received so much. Like, if to receive people of those cultures inside the European thing, maybe it is not so common. I'm also an example of that, because I did not study I'm a homegrown India product, okay? But somehow through whatever I did, the fact that I have been invited here and there and I'm doing things, it shows that also the world is receptive and they think what I do is universal. So I think just to know that not everybody has the same resources, and but everything is a resource, not only what one sees in one culture, there is always something, and to respect that, I think, and you already do it, that you ask this, right? So I have nothing more to add.
I think this is the statement that we are more common than different, and that we need to start from that to actually respect each other. I think that is such a strong and also important kind of statement, again, on top of all the other ones that you already made. So thanks so much, Anupama.
You can say Anu also. You can
Anu, that's Anu. Yeah, I'm always mixing the sorry about that.
Not important.
I was hoping maybe to wrap up, because we are already 1.5 hours going, but I'll quickly give the word to Yael to ask the last question. But again, already in advance, before more people have to go, thank you so much. This was fantastic. You inspired me, and I'm sure many of us listening. So thank you so much. Yael, perhaps one more quick question then.
Thank you so much for this little time. I wanted to go back to the discussion, because we have students here and also people of all ages that are always growing. I want to talk about the notion of time. So you gave yourself so much time, it seems, from education, 23, to then develop things slowly, and knowledge and experience through the materials and working with. And I think it's so antinomous to what we tend to think for young people, right? They need to quickly finish their studies and then quickly. And I just wanted you to talk one more time about this notion of growing knowledge over time.
I think it's very interesting that you bring this up, and because that has been the essence of how I spoke the theory behind my work. So I'm happy to close also with these thoughts. While I took time, it's also not about delaying, because I also, on the other hand, the opposite of what you said is also true. I started my office at the age of 23, and a lot of about 100 buildings were built in 10 years or some 15 years. Okay. So it's not like, the thing is, I dedicatedly pursued for 15, 20 years, the open questions that came out of each project. So when I'm talking to you, I'm showing you so much time it took to solve the ferrocement, to solve some one joint. I keep thinking, what will I do? What should I do? And it comes and haunts me after 2 years. I'm very happy. Then I go back and I think, this could be optimized because of that and this. Then I go back to it because it just pulls me like a magnet. So now, obviously, when I talk to you, more than the ready projects, I like to talk what is still open question for me, because that's where I'm present in my mind right now. No? So, and I think what I meant by taking time in that sense was that I like to, can I give a personal message, okay, to the students? Because I, as a teacher, okay, I see there is a lot of procrastination going on in the studio. We have the writer's block, we have a sitting on the desk. Sometimes it's because we are, the mind is disconnected from the body and from the sight and the everything else, because architecture is like a synthesis, right, of all the things. But if you cut yourself from all those influences and you sit in one room in your own head, it can in fact paralyze you. And sometimes to do a one-to-one object is much faster to solve the detail and understand this is so heavy. If I tell the student this is so heavy, he will think, oh, my teacher is not letting me do it. But if he has to actually solve that thing, he will come back humble next day. There is nothing. What is beautiful in experimentation is that the empirical confrontation, it teaches you the natural law. The law is visible. I cannot see gravity, right? I cannot see it. If my cup falls, I see immediately the gravity was there. So it's so much more than to learn physics. In 1 second, I can know that. So I feel that what I would like to say is that in every minute of our life, we have all options what to do. It's only in every minute to actually act. What has added up to this 30 years of this is because it's not that I am now doing this suddenly, that I was trying to get on somewhere. It's just the attitude I'm trying to say, is that if you feel that your life is important, your time is limited on the planet, you don't think that you don't overrate your importance and your significance. You know that you're not the center of the universe. At the same time, you're not irrelevant. You are at peace with where you are. So all that matters, every minute how you spend it is important. So procrastination happens also. One has to know, sometimes maybe don't do that. You need to do something, whatever it is. But it's not about delaying. It's about realizing every minute what you do, that adds up to your destiny. So even it could take a like to go to the moon, or, actually, if you think of how fast we have gone exponentially, how much ancient times every evolution took place, and now how fast it goes. It doesn't happen if you did nothing. It was about every minute in your life. You can choose to act or don't act, and then you choose to act here or there or there and there. And all that I did in my life, my portfolio, it is not only the result of what I did, but it's also all the things I said no to. I said no to a lot of things, and that's why I have this life. And so what we don't do, or we decide, I'm not going to do it because I don't believe in it. I shouldn't do it, because everything you do, it's going to shape you back. So that's how to use your private time. I feel. I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, it's very nice. Thank you very much for these very wise words.
I just feel life is short. I've seen a lot of very difficult things that I don't take life and my own lifetime for granted from a very young age. So I feel that I've seen so much suffering in close quarters and also everywhere else, that I think we have to all the more celebrate everything that we have, you know. And that's why I want to say that's every rich, poor, privileged, unprivileged, any geographical zone, all of us, it's a great equalizer. Everybody has 24 hours in the day. Whether a president is managing to go to the gym every day, come on, who are we? Why can we not do it, you know?
Thank
Perfect.
you.
As you announced, I think this is indeed a very nice closing. Thanks a lot, Anu.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for sticking around. It was fantastic. I would maybe suggest, if you don't mind, maybe show yourself and wave thank you or goodbye.
Thank you all so much. I look forward to interacting with all of you on any platform, wherever.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
really
Thank
hope to
you.
meet in person.
Look how much enthusiasm, Anu. So thank you again.
Thank you so
and,
much,
hope to see you
everyone.
soon in person.
Thank you, Philip, for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Yael. Lovely question.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.